Welcome to The Side Quest, a weekly show on the Grep Beat podcast where we interview interesting people adding to the North Carolina startup community. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello, welcome again to this week's episode of The Side Quest. It is the week of May 20-ish, and my name is Joe Colopy. I am the Grep Beat Godfather. With me, as always, is Sonali of Primordial Ventures. Sonali, how's it going?
It's going great. You know, I'm in my exact same location, but Joe, you have a different background today. Where are you?
You might be surprised to learn this is not a built-in Zoom background of the Fairfield Inn in Boone, North Carolina. That is not part of the collection.
Wow.
I am actually live talking from the Fairfield View in Boone, North Carolina. And I'll tell you why, Snelly, not that you asked, but I will tell you the whole story. I decided this would be a great week for a motorcycle adventure on the Blue Ridge Parkway. I've always wanted to do it. I have a motorcycle, but I've never really done it overnight like this. So let's see, what day is it? So we are recording on Tuesday, even though we're going to publish on Thursday. So on Monday, I woke up early. I packed up my my motorcycle and I rode up to Roanoke, Virginia. In fact, what I'm going to do, just since we could do this, is right outside my window. You see the bike there?
Love this parking lot. There's
It's not about the parking lot, Sonali. Stay focused. It's about the motorcycle. I think our viewers and our podcast listeners will have to believe me. It's a Triumph Bonneville, just like the guy who on the pit who's going on his motorcycle adventure. Same kind he rides, except mine's a newer version. It's a 2022.
I'm sure we can get into this, but I want to know, what are you trying to find in the mountains? Is this like a spiritual enlightenment journey? Like, what is in the mountains for you?
Well, we are going to talk about all of that and my motorcycle adventure, but more importantly, we're going to bring on Amanda Stockwell and hear what she thinks this week's guest of the Seed List and Duke and many other things. Without further ado, let's bring on Amanda.
Good morning.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How about you?
Good. Welcome to the Side Quest.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's so good to have you.
Sonali was mid asking me a question. So just to complete that thought, and then we can riff on whatever. I rode up to Roanoke, Virginia on Monday. And then on all of Tuesday, I woke up early and I rode down the Blue Ridge Parkway, which was just beautiful and lovely and a lovely weather, lovely views from Tuesday morning. And then sometime late afternoon, I ended up in Boone, North Carolina. And that's where I stayed the night yesterday. And Blue Ridge Parkway, before Roanoke in Virginia, there's kind of construction parts are closed. And after Boone, between Boone and Asheville, there's construction, not construction, it's fixing it because of Hurricane Helene, and it's kind of closed. So I had a nice long run, and it's been lovely. And I'm still here, and I will probably motorcycle around somewhere today and then head back to Durham early on Thursday.
Okay. Wow.
But it's not about my motorcycle adventure. It's just about having this wonderful trip with beautiful views. It's not a pilgrimage of anything, but we could talk more about that when I'm back in the 919. Right. Until then, I want to hear about Amanda. Amanda, welcome again.
Thank
you. Yeah, so let's just get into it a little bit. We at Grep Beat work with you a bit through the Seed List. We did recently a joint event called College Night in the spring to help our listeners and viewers maybe get us a little bit of a lowdown in terms of what is the Seed List, and you have many other things that you're kind of tied into as well.
Yeah.
Give us a lowdown in terms of what those things are.
Yeah. So as probably a familiar role for many people listening to this, I am a wearer of many hats. But the biggest one I'm wearing right now is
not a hat like this. Just just for our top packet wars, just to be very clear.
Fortunately though.
Yes. There we go. It is a, figurative hat or hats, or what is that, right? Where I'm wearing a literal hat. Okay, there we go.
Figuratively, I wear many hats. The hat that I wear at this seed list is that I'm the founder and I call myself the chief mentor, but I'm essentially the executive director. But the seed list is a nonprofit that I started last year to help connect students into startups in the local area. So I'm based in Chapel Hill. That's where I am today. No adventures for me. But the adventure that I have been on the last couple of weeks is doing the mad dash of last minute defining of roles at local startups and interviewing and matching students. So I was just looking at the spreadsheet before we started this conversation. I think we're going to have about 8 students in our core program this summer. Yeah, which is really exciting. And then we have a couple of partnerships brewing so we can expand our reach a little bit and include some extra students in our programming. So
Yeah. So just to be kind of clear, you're matching college students in the Triangle area. Is that fair? Okay.
Well, it started with the Triangle. We're starting to expand a little bit. As you know, in startup land, we are constantly iterating and constantly adding. But yes, the intention is to focus on the Triangle area.
With, at least that's your core group, Triangle universities with Triangle-based startups. Is that correct? Very cool. And is this the first summer that it's being that these students are actually being placed in the startups?
Yeah. So I ran a pilot sort of to test things out last summer. So I guess I should give you a bit of context, a bit of background, how I came into this. I've spent my whole career in tech, almost 20 years working in UX, either working primarily within startups. It's actually how I came to be living in North Carolina. I worked at a startup almost 20 years ago here. And then throughout my consulting career, I have tended to focus either on startups or on R&D sort of innovation teams at really big corporations. So the startup world is familiar to me. And about 2 years ago, I started teaching at Duke. There's a program called the Design and Technology Innovation. It's an engineering master's program. It is sort of a blend of the entrepreneurship and innovation stuff with some design thinking and core engineering strategies. So for a long time, I had been noticing this trend that we didn't always do the best job at investing in the next generation and helping them get into the startup scene or kind of find their way, navigate their careers. And I am a lady who sees a problem and can't help but try to solve it. So when it was about last March, a friend of mine who's a serial founder, Runbin, Don, you may know him. I think he might be in your portfolio. Maybe. Said to me, we ran into each other co-working, and he said, hey, now that you're teaching, kind of had this thought, I would like to hire more interns, but I don't have time to find them. I don't have time to screen them. I don't have time to recruit them. And my famous last words were, do you want some help with that? And I launched into discovery mode because that's what I do. Ran a pilot last summer with just 4 students, and I had just one partner startup and I had one intern working for me. And the good news is from the pilot that it went incredibly well. The startup was really happy. They just won their coaching. Shout out, Mike. Just won a big grant. And all 4 of my students from last summer, as of, I think, Monday, have jobs.
Yay. That's great.
So shout out Seedlist OG crew. Congratulations.
Congratulations to all of them. That is so exciting.
Yeah. So this year sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, so this year we're expanding, iterating, kind of adding and learning as we grow.
Amazing. I also just feel like as a college student, and I went to college in North Carolina, like so many students, if they wanted to look for a place to work, were looking outside of the state and not within the ecosystem. And I think it was just because maybe there weren't enough pathways, or maybe there just weren't enough, easy LinkedIn applications. And I also feel like within the ecosystem, it's very just like relationship driven, not necessarily in a bad way, but just, if you're tapped into the ecosystem, about the opportunities that are here. But a student who might not be, will, understandably look for opportunities outside of it. So just the fact that you're creating these inroads and these bridges is so exciting and so needed.
That's definitely true. So, man, I have a little bit of perspective with this, and I have some really follow-up questions, and they're not softball questions. So I want you to be ready, okay, for what's going to happen. No, I'm still pretty nice. Okay, so in 2019, I sponsored a program and basically ran a program through the North Carolina School of Science and Math, where it was addressing so these kids are juniors and seniors from all over the state who kind of live at the time just at the Durham campus. And over the summer, there was a pretty robust program for them to do research and mentorship through different labs, NC State, Duke, UNC, so very PhD-ish type. And I really wanted to bring more experiential learning into the experience and connect them in entrepreneurial experience, especially locally. So I ran a test case that summer, and it's noted this was pre-COVID. So I got one case in, and then COVID hit, and then we didn't do it again, where I had 8 students placed at local startups. And what I found, and most of those startups were either very closely directly related to me or alumni of the school. And what I found is there was a lot of demand when I looked at these things in terms on the student side. So Sonali, to your point, there's lots. I mean, you put in something like that, and there's actually a lot of student demand because people really want internships, and they're particularly hard to get. Especially at high school level, but even within college, it's just really difficult, right? But the hard part was on the startup side, is getting the startups to feel like it's worth their time. It's not a distraction, that they're often the earlier stage ones. They don't have a lot of, they're not viewing things very far out, right? It's not like IBM where they're hiring a class of 20 people and it doesn't really matter if they have this specific need. It's very point by point. So I found all the work was really twisting arms almost on the startup side to say, hey, take 1 or take 2. And it was just for the heck of it. Now, the exception, of course, is when it had to do with software developers between their junior and senior year, but just, I don't want to say general, everyone else is really quite difficult. So it required a lot more focus. And then COVID hit, and then got focused on other things and decided to support the school in other ways. Do you feel is that the challenge you have? And I know it's early days for you all, but it's cohorts is about 8, which is about what we had too, is very similar. It's also worth noting that the students, after the fact, find it wildly impactful, loved it, and came back to me many years later saying how great it was. They got real work experience. And these kids were a little bit younger than the ones you're dealing with, and how it was really, really neat. But the startups, I think they're also appreciative, but they didn't tend to they're small, right? So they're not coming back year after year.
Yeah.
How do you address that? Or are you running the same thing or not running the same thing? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
See, I told you it would be easy. This is not
okay. I have thought about this a lot. So I'm glad that you asked about it. So one of the things that I observed early on, so my background is primarily in UX research and product strategy. So something that I am very attuned to and excel at is listening to feedback and understanding patterns and coming up with insight. And one of the early insights that I had was that besides the fact that startups don't have time to recruit students, they don't have time to host them. They don't even necessarily know what kind of project to delegate that's appropriate for a student. But I have many years of consulting experience and working on cross-functional teams. So I tackle that in a couple of ways. One is that I have a catalog of student projects to serve as a starting point, which has been informed by, like I said, many years of consulting and working on cross-functional teams and at startups. And I really broke down sort of individual projects that are reasonable to do in a summer for a student at kind of the college level that talk about from the startups and not just what skills they might need, but functionally, what will they get? Will they get a better understanding of what their pricing model will be? Will they get a tested version of their prototype with some feedback about what to change in the future? Will they get a new machine learning model, whatever it is? They're always a starting point. At least thus far, nothing has ever gone exactly as fleshed out in the initial program, but it is a hugely helpful starting point for the startups to understand a baseline of what's reasonable for the students and what they could possibly do. The other part of that is that it helps me understand what kind of students would be able to reasonably handle that. A slight nuance for me to kind of introduce is that a lot of so one of the other things I did was a sort of the competitive review or sort of landscape review of various internship programs and what had worked well and what had not. And one of the things that I identified is that there is a lot of programming, at least in our area, for students who want to be entrepreneurs. There are tons of student startup accelerators, lots of programming about how do you start your first thing. One of the things I noticed, and in talking to my students as well, there are a lot of students who are interested in the startup space who aren't really ready to be a founder yet. Maybe they're really interested in UX design, or they're really interested in being a software developer, hardware developer, whatever. But they don't want to be a founder yet. They don't want to go through an accelerator. They just want to kind of learn about the experience. They want to get exposed to it. I will say that I think one of my students last year, the core learning was actually maybe they weren't really that well suited for a startup. They didn't love the kind of chaotic pace that it can be inside of a startup. But that was incredibly meaningful as a learning experience for them. And now they're in a different situation. But I think a lot of it too is that I really focus on, so the other component of that is that I don't just place the students in an internship and then say sayonara. I pulled on kind of my various experiences teaching, and I created wraparound programming. So I have a full day orientation. And this year, I'm excited. I'm partnering with Leadership Triangle, which is I saw the nod of recognition. So for those who don't know, they're a local nonprofit that focuses on professional development for young professionals. And naturally, they have a lot of leadership content and sort of work readiness content. So this summer, all of the students who are in the full program will have startup orientation. They'll have, I believe it's 5 sort of 2-hour in-person training sessions throughout the summer.
Great.
All the students are joining a cohort of other students, so they'll be able to rely on each other. I'll facilitate weekly mentoring sessions, either with me or someone if there is an expertise that I don't have. So they'll get weekly mentoring, weekly check-ins. I coordinate pretty closely with the startups to help them organize and know how to integrate the student and kind of keep track of their progress. So we'll see how it goes this summer. Maybe we could do this again in September and I can reflect.
Well, I think for what it's worth, having kind of done it one summer many moons ago, I think that is definitely the right way to go. And I think what you're doing, because I'm dabbling in a whole bunch of different things. I think some layer of programming was key. I think some level of framing up projects or helping startups frame up projects is key. And I also think it just takes almost kind of years of nurturing certain startups so they just build it into their program. And so the fact you're focused on this versus, me dabbling in it, I think makes a huge difference. What the reason I was really tied in, and which is why I'm excited in terms of what you're doing, is if you look at the long-term trajectory of the Triangle in North Carolina, and so now to your point of like people, particularly you said you went to school in North Carolina, but let's just say you went to Duke, just for an example.
Just an example.
Duke is not necessarily very Triangle focused, in my opinion,
agreed.
because everyone comes from somewhere else and they tend to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so to turn that tide is we need to bring the Triangle to places like Duke. And that's true at UNC and somewhat NC State. And of course, there are other schools. And I think doing that proactively, like what you're doing, is really a critical piece of it, because there are some great opportunities here. And there are some great future founders or great, I totally agree. Not everyone is a founder. That's not even what we need. We just need more smart, great people working on startups in some capacity here. Whether they're found or not is a different detail. But I think doing what you're doing, focus, really helps turn the tide and really starts getting more and more people to stay here, which is more now than what 10 years ago. And I think through what you're doing, hopefully is even more different 10 years from now.
Yeah, I will say that one of the people that I placed last summer has a job in Raleigh, a full-time job in Raleigh. He just graduated.
There you go.
And I can't tell you, I completely agree. I can't tell you how many students I talked to who would say things like, yeah, of course I want to work in a startup, but I can't afford to live in Silicon Valley this summer. And so that was one of my primary motivators also. And I have an special focus on traditionally underserved populations, which is a very broad term, right? That means a lot of different things. But one of my key focuses, to your point, is to keep the already really smart students who are here, and the ones who have come from other places, let them know about the vibrant community that's here and the many opportunities, and keep, anytime you can get a concentration of smart people, good things happen.
Yeah. Well, and also I think with some of the startups that I've just like gotten the privilege to meet and work with, it does seem like the culture within the Triangle and just within North Carolina, and I'm sure this is, also really common in other parts of the Southeast. I'm just not familiar with those ecosystems, but just even locally, it feels like it's not a revolving door of talent. Like, I feel like once you join a startup here locally, there is a lot of work that the startups do to really nurture that talent and keep them versus sort of the more, maybe like transient feeling and some of these like
a little bit more mercenary approach.
Yeah.
That's what I found. I mean, every area has its own pros and cons, right? But I think one of the challenges in areas like Silicon Valley, it does lend itself to a little bit more of a mercenary transactional view, which I think if you're really trying to build experience, it sounds appealing, but that's not really how you get it.
The market today, I think the ticket price for just like a stable, great job is also, I mean, it's just so much more valuable. Like, incredibly intelligent students are part of this broader rat race to find junior roles that are increasingly compressed and have so much to bring to a table, but just like can't find that inroad to that table. Like, can't find a company that's maybe willing to take a risk, or maybe has the resources to take that risk, or, is only hiring senior people versus junior people. So I think especially locally within that ecosystem, like that is a huge gap just like nationally that I feel like, Amanda, your work, I mean, bit by bit, year by year is really going to help fill.
Thanks. Yeah, I hope so. That's the plan.
Yeah. We're excited about it. Obviously, we're trying to do very similar things through journalism at GrupBeat. And I think the key thing about GrupBeat and the key thing about the Seedless, what you're doing is we can't do everything, and you can't do everything, right? So it's about focus and getting good at like one thing that impacts this region versus trying to be a jack of all trades of a whole bunch of things. So I think what you're doing, we're excited to see where it goes. In terms of where it goes or how you got here, I was looking at your LinkedIn earlier, which, by the way, we're not connected. We're a secondary connection, but I said connection. So maybe we could change that today. That's
yeah, we can fix that.
Your hands. You choose, right? I can't say Sonali has bad luck with being first level connect with people, but
really bad luck there. Yeah. We have a history on this podcast of trying to get our guests to connect with us on LinkedIn with varying degrees of success. But
well, Sonali, we are actual friends. So
we are actual friends.
From LinkedIn.
How does that work? Oh my gosh. I don't know. How did you where did you grow up? How did you find your way here?
Yeah, so I referenced this, I think, a little bit before. I grew up in Maine, very, very different vibe than here. I went to school in Boston, and then I graduated in 2008, and to the horror of my parents and most of the responsible adults in my life, instead of taking a job at the internship I had in Boston, I decided to apply for jobs all over the world because I had never lived outside of New England, and I just wanted to try it out. And the 2 job offers I got were in Atlanta and Durham, North Carolina. So I moved here in 2008 because I got a job at then it was a startup. Now it's been sold, and I think it still exists in some capacity. But for old school Durham startup people, I worked at iContact in 2008. I was.
Yes, I am very familiar with iContact.
I'm sure yes. I also
arch-enemies is the right word. I think philosophically we're just very different, but we're in the same space. So I knew Aaron Houghton and Ryan Ellis well enough. So, and
And
that
I
was
knew
great.
nothing about email marketing before that, but what
Oh,
I
that's-
did know is that I didn't want to work at a human factors military consulting firm, which was my other job offer. So
Okay.
Well, I think you got a good taste of startup life, which is important. And yeah, I notice on you, I love how everyone says that, I went to school in North Carolina or I went to school in Boston. So I noticed you went to Tufts, which I remember many a time going up there. Was it Davis Square
oh
up there
yes.
and kind of roaming
Yeah,
around
yeah.
there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some Boston
Yeah, it's
life
a
there.
good but it's funny though, people I feel like at least here either know exactly where Tufts is and have been to Davis Square themselves, or they look at me with a slightly blank look. Or like, what's that?
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of I mean, I think in the Northeast, I mean, there should be, but I think in the Northeast, it's very well known. I think
Yeah.
you get down here because there's such a strong university culture that if you didn't go to school in the Triangle or an ACC school, it drops off really quick, like more than normal.
And we're not a great basketball team, so it didn't translate. The things that were important there did not translate here to university life.
So where sort of like the Tufts like grad schools are, maybe the medical or maybe like the dental campus. I forgot exactly where, but like Chinatown surrounds parts of it, and like it's just right in that downtown area of Boston. I would just take so many walks there.
Well, I imagine that's probably the medical school. Didn't they cluster all the medical schools together where like the undergraduate
Tufts
part of it was, I don't even know, like what town is that? Like
so we were on the town line of Medford and Somerville. So
yeah, because you're on
some
the
years I lived in Medford, some years I lived in Somerville. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Good times, good Boston times. Well, that is very, very cool. And it sounds like you're working on some really interesting things. Are there any other things coming up or any, like I can imagine you're going to be busy this summer with the seed list?
Yes. Well, I'll put a few things on everyone's radar. So there will be a student showcase in August. I think it will be August 26th. We'll announce it when it's finalized. So if you're interested to see what the students have worked on this summer, the community is invited. It'll be a good chance to come see what they've worked on. There have been initial conversations for another college community night later in the fall, probably September. So more to come on that. And we are always looking for volunteer mentors, people to do things like review resumes, mock interview the students. And of course, if you are a startup who could take on an intern or someone who wants to invest in the next generation, hit me up. We are always looking for support in those ways.
So, Amanda, how would someone find you or more information on the seed list? Obviously, LinkedIn. I mean, I got my fingers crossed. I get connected. Who knows what technology? But outside of that, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, so I actually am on LinkedIn a lot, so you can find me there. But the seedlist.org, it's actually under construction. I'll have a student doing some improvements to it this summer, but there's contact form there, or you can reach out at hello@theseedlist.org.
Perfect. All right. Well, Amanda, it has been lovely having you on the show today. I think it is such a great time to be talking about the seed list too, as I think pretty much everyone of all the universities graduated, I think by now.
I think
And so it's the beginning of the summer sessions, and look forward. I know we're going to have a handful of college students around our office. And so we will look forward to reconnecting, hopefully in a fall college night or whatever we call it. And learning more how the summer went.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was great to talk to you both, and reach out, everybody.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks so much, Amanda.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks for joining. Be sure to follow us through your favorite podcast platform. Now get back to working on your side quest